Before Jack Parsons enters the scene in America, the scientific consensus was that we would never enter space, that was an impossibility. But this rich kid, who also happened to be an occultist and who also would perform rituals and sacrifice to summon demons, well, no, he expressed the belief that they could fundamentally alter humanity, and he had a vision. He said, no, we can make this work. We can get to space. Check out this article. Again, this is published. You can look this up yourself. Here's the headline: Sex, Rocket Science, and Satanism. Meet NASA's real hidden figures. And I'm going to read you directly from this article because it's so unbelievable. My jaw was on the floor. I'm skimming through it because it's way too long. It would make this show forever, but we will link it, and you absolutely must read it. It reads, quote, Jack Parsons is barely acknowledged on NASA's website, and he's the man who made rockets a reality and co-founded the agency's Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL, home to missions which paved the way for the Apollo programs and continue to explore Mars and outer space today. If Parsons' life story was a film script, it would be dubbed preposterous. He invented jet propulsion technology in the face of industry-wide derision that rockets would never exist, but was also a senior figure in the occult and invited L. Ron Hubbard, yes, L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology, into his confidence and riotous parties. Parsons tried to sell his government-funded inventions to Israel before winding up dying at the age of 37 in a self-created explosion, leaving a mass of disturbing materials for his friends to discover. Here's the remarkably twisting tale of his life. So he too, like Aleister Crowley, was just interested in the demonic when he was young. He also liked science fiction. His story begins when he's 14 years old. And as a fan of science fiction, he decides to begin experiments that would eventually shape his life with his school friend named Edward Foreman. The pair took to playing with rockets in Parsons' back garden and soon created their own solid-fueled rockets. It was here that Jack would begin to link science with Satanism. Parsons later claimed he first summoned the devil at age 13 in a terrifying experience. Jack and Ed would later attend and then drop out of college. In 1936, they met a 22-year-old Frank Molina, who was a grad student who shared their passion for defying gravity. When Parsons and Molina met, their enthusiasm for rocketry and space travel bonded them like a Masonic handshake, one writer says. I'm sure it did. Molina helped by getting their research funded by Caltech, and their experiments were quite dangerous. There were a lot of explosions. And so he and his friends became known as the Suicide Squad. They decided to move their experiments into the desert, and this part is just amazing. I'm going to read you a direct quotation here. Once again, Jack's fascinations with the occult and rocketry collided. In the desert lands outside of Caltech, there is a former river channel called Arroyo Seco. It is flanked on both sides by rock, one of which is called Devil's Gate, thanks to its shape of a horned head. Some locals believed the mouth of Arroyo Seco was a portal to other dimensions. But for Parsons, the area had two uses. He tested rockets there, but years later, he would return to conduct ceremonies and rituals with other occultists in the same spot. By golly, guys, what then happens is that on Halloween of all nights in 1936, they have a scientific breakthrough after they accidentally set fire to the oxygen line of their small rocket motor. And although it didn't launch, Molina and his team were enthused. They said this test was successful. He wrote to his parents, and NASA would later consider that experiment, which happened again on Halloween, to be the first rocket experiment of what would later become the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So there was a method to the Suicide Squad's madness. They had created a fuel that would burn cleanly and be stored without exploding. And the scientific community was skeptical, but the U.S. Army saw potential, and they offered to fund the Trios project in 1939. So great. A satanic little cult meets the United States government. Thereafter, Jack's credibility in the scientific community soared, and so did his interest in the supernatural and the demonic. He was taken to a meeting of OTO, which stands for the Order of Templi Orientis, an occult society in Los Angeles in 1939, and he became fully engrossed If you're wondering what OTO is, it was a group that was formed by and followed the teachings of Aleister Crowley. Again, the heroin-addicted sexual deviant and occultist who was considered the wickedest man in the world by the press in his native England. Parsons went from just reading Crowley's writings to 50% becoming the Beast 666's pen pal. Within a few years, Crowley considered Parsons his American protege. Parsons was barely in his mid-20s, and he was not at all concerned with keeping his personal and professional proclivities separate. The article tells us that the California Tech ran stories at the time that reported that he chanted Crowley's hymn before he lit his rockets. They're just chanting satanic, demonic hymns before they lit these rockets, guys. This is not a joke. This is not a test. This is history that is hiding right under your nose.